check to see if I've got some vocal, and it looks like I also have one or two folks in here with me. Glad to have you aboard. Let me see who that is. Maybe I can get the manage participants thing to pop up here for me. Oh, there. Okay. Dalton, glad to see you here. Grant as well. Good. Okay. Here, of course, is the over at the data admin screen, and I'm going to be recording this session, so if people are not able to be here, or they're not here, they can at least see them. I want to make sure that we kind of stay on track, and this is the week of the 5th of September, and just so everybody knows, on the 7th, there's an exam that's due. I've got some resources. Now this thing's hidden, you don't need it. It's an agenda from some time back. But there are, I have some references that I think are interesting. One of the things I'm very interested in are sites of old bombs and sites where there are mines. And these are folks who use a database to determine the location of mines and old World War II bombs censuses, because there were millions of ordnance dropped in the Second World War in Europe, and they find them all of the time. And so I wanted to show you, this is another this is from the Geneva International Center. Then also, here are some other practical applications of databases that I want to let you have there. And I thought that one's unpublished because it's not Valentine's Day, but this notion of a virtual assistant, and they are really based on a database. And these other things you see are just not of any relevance. I want to go back up here for a moment to the announcements area, okay? And I want to make sure everybody kind of has a sense of what we're doing. I have over here the uploads for the 4 workshops, okay, and Access Workshops 1, Access Workshop 2, Access Workshop 3, and then 4. We're going to work on Access Workshop 3 today, and what I'm going to do, and if I were you, you might want to do this, is just go ahead and go in and of course, you know, they're over there they're in the files section. I'm just I like to go ahead and then just make a copy of it. Okay, and that way I know what I'm working on. Now we're going to work on Access Workshop 3 today, and that's really covered over in Rockoff, which is the blue text over on Chapter 12, and so you'll want to pop over there and take a look at it. And what he's working with over in 12, okay, and he really just walked through all of them for some action queries, and pop us over to get over there. And this is he's talking here about using crosstabs and pivot tables, and we did that some a little bit. But I want to make sure that you see what we've got. So I'm gonna make myself a copy of these, and and Access Workshop 3 is the geographic sales, and that's over in the campus files. So let's go to the files area,
right?
And if you have any questions, I'll stop for a second, or make sure if you need to be muted, maybe, unless you have a question, or we'll hear your dog bark and that kind of stuff. You probably could hear mine snoring. Dog behind. Anyway, let me scroll down here to geographic sales, and we'll talk about that file. And then I have some other things I want to show. Here it is. This geographic sales Access Workshop 3. If you want to download it, okay, over to your desktop, and so I would save it. I'd say this is what it is on your desktop, and we'll take a look for a moment and see what we've got in here in terms of files. You can see I've downloaded it before, so That's why I've got the number 1. But this shows you the sales, okay, by region. I don't think I had any data in there. Yeah, I did. And here we are by, this is right from the database. Just simply run a query and get choose the region, choose the state, and choose the sales. And there in chapter 12, he talks about the use of pivot tables. Now, he also talks about crosstab queries. And let me say this, he does a nice job with it, but I think they're just too clunky to deal with, too complicated. I would recommend if you have a set of data that you really want to play around with, and then maybe have some measures and counts. See what we have right here in column A and column B are what we would call dimension data or categorical data. Okay, and what makes each of these records unique is two things. Well, it's really a combination of two things: the region and the state. So if you had a table, you could make these both the primary key or leave them as such with an implied primary key. But the bottom line is, I think it's just so much easier to work in pivot tables than it is. And if you want to, you could try and mess around with the crosstab queries. If you take a look at page 250 in the Rockoff text, you're going to see it, the SQL equivalent. And this is using that transform, sum, select, etc. That is a lot of work to do, I think, when you can just simply go over into the pivot table and use it. Now, I want you to know something. Access after 2013 quit carrying the pivot table view, so that's not accurate. However, you certainly can use a pivot table in Excel, and it's my recommendation that you do for the simple reason that you're often going to have measures. Okay, that is something I can count, divide, multiply, etc. You're going to have measures more often than not, and you're going to have multiple measures. You're not going to have just something as simplistic as this. So you might have, again, this is a dimension, this is a dimension. We talk about that, or attribute, and these are what we call measures. Okay, and remember in the data warehouse you have fact tables. This would be a fact table, if you would, of sorts, because it shows a fact. Okay, it's something I can count. Then these are drawn from dimension tables, i.e. attribute tables. That's how we mix and match them together. Now, I want to show you, if you click on sheet 1, you're going to see where we took just this simple set of data. And look, this could be really, really extensive. So I really think the pivot table, if you're going to do that, is much more amenable to work. And you can go ahead and play around with the crosstabs queries, but frankly, I think it's just a waste of time. Now you can see here that I've done I've created I've used a pivot table, and here we have the region, the state, and the sales. And this gives me an opportunity to kind of get us acclimated one more time to how this works. Now, what they're really showing you is a series of boxes or the report filter. Think of it like, you know, a page or a big area, and I can scroll down there and I can move to the rows, the columns. I can do anything I want to with it, but it really frames the whole thing. If you see, for example, up here, I can focus on one region, or two, or any combination I want. Okay, so it frames this whole thing. Then column labels. If I had other attributes I wanted to include, I could put them in the columns. And then I have these over here in rows. Okay, and you can see I've applied a thermal to this. Okay, and basically I've run a green, okay, to red thermal. And let's do something here real quickly. Let's go ahead and put those, see if we can put those into a comma format as opposed to just a general number. Now we may not be able to. Let's try and put them in as currency. Yeah, we are. We're able to. All right. And why I had these in this color, so I'm going to do this right now. This doesn't look right. I'm going to get rid of the color there. And I'm going to clear the rules from the selected cells. And that should do it. Well, it's supposed to do it. Let's find it here for a minute. Not letting me do it. That's strange. Well, all right. That's right. We'll fix this. I'm going to take the sum. Let's throw them just back up here. We're not going to break the thing. Okay. Now we're going to leave this by region. Okay, this big window. But this time I'm going to throw it off, and just to get a different look, I'm going to put it into state. Okay. And then I'm going to put sales, of course, into the values. And this will show me the sum of sales in each state. So you can see how much easier it is to work with this than it is to try to mess with it in terms of doing a crosshead query. And again, here we've taken the geographic sales. This is, of course, from those tables. And if we had a full address and everything, we could literally take this down to sale by customer. And while I'm talking about that, I always like to bring in something that I think is some real practical use to or practical significance. And by the way, this file, this is what we upload for Access Workshop number 3. So you'll want to do that now so that you get the credit. I'm going to go over to the New York Times for a moment. I want to show you something, a couple of things I think they're very useful. This is one, let's see here. This is an article about the city of Houston and how the development that occurred put them into a situation. Now, what's really incredible, watch what happened, watch this thing. That's going to start at 2000 and come up all the way, and you'll start to see literally the build-up in the development. Now again, this is using a database, okay, layered with probably satellite images or Google Earth images. My hunch would be probably satellite images, but you can see the high development, and you see it as things get filled in and that green space starts to go away. And when you look at it from this standpoint as a decision maker, if you're involved, you can start to see, how easily the place could get flooded because you see all this water, okay, you see all the developments that's occurred. And this shows you the 100-year and 500-year floodplains and then layers over the building damage. So literally what they've done here is that these are a series of queries, using GIS data, map data, okay, and looking at the building damage and as far as the floodplains and seeing that pattern. This is another example of why a database can be such a powerful tool, because it can help. Here you're trying to figure out, okay, which of these areas are outside the floodplains that had building damage, which ones are inside the floodplains. And that starts to see, and you see they pinpoint some areas, okay, for you to take a look at, what they call East Houston and Baytown. And this is in no way being critical of the people of Houston or anything. They've been through a terrible experience, but I wanted to let you see how having this type of data can really help us out. And you can see here they've got it even, these are some thermal maps with overlays on Baytown and East Houston, and then some photos within. they show you, for example, this an entire neighborhood built in a floodplain, and and they speak of, here's another Kingwood, and they show you the development of the place, and then the flooding that occurred. Okay, and one of the challenges that we have, 90% of the people in the world live, okay, near water. That's a startling thing for people to understand, but it's true. I think it's 80 or 90% of all 7 billion of us are around water. So that being said, floods, hurricanes. Of course, you got another hurricane heading into Florida. Tracking this data, so I'd like you to see that there's some real practical and very important uses of this technology, and it wouldn't be possible to do this without without database technology overlaid on these topographical maps. Here's another one, looking at risk zones, and this showing the share of uninsured homes. Okay, so I want to let you take a look at that, because I thought it was just incredibly incredible use of a tool that, again, we can see how powerful and useful a database is, and obviously something that they'll want to use. I'm going to pop over to the business section for a minute. Okay, and there's some other things I certainly would say you'd want to take a look at. Okay, and some things are what are going on legally, and again, a lot of news over here. Okay, here's one that certainly is applicable in terms of dealing with people's privacy. And here is this is about a flying car startup, which obviously utilizes the database technology. And glad to see 3 or 4 of us. I know other people will be looking at the recording. I'm going to go over to the LA Times for a minute, because I want to show you something over there as well. And this is, I think, something quite interesting. A lot of times people will ask me, and this applies to data admin, probably to policy as well. You might have heard of this shoe. I'd never heard of them before until I saw this article. But these are shoes that they sell for like, I don't know, $3,000, $4,000 a pair or something like that. You guys are into all that stuff, you probably know. But here's an interesting thing about this whole article is about knockoff products, okay? And literally where people are taking the design ideas, the intellectual capital, and copying it. And so when you hear me say, the intellectual capital or the intangible assets, one of them, and this is for, is product design. And so again, this is not possible to get all the different types without databases and without the technology. You need those for the CAD/CAM to get done. And they walk you through spotting the fake ones, okay? Because I assume then that people are buying knockoffs, and I don't know what they're paying for the knockoffs, but again, this is just this whole idea of how valuable this stuff is. Well, let's go back over here, and we're in the files section, okay? And again, I showed you the data, and what we did was we just simply, this file, okay, was from the sales data. And so I want to go back over here and take a look for just a moment, and let's find the Rockoff data, okay? And we'll pop that open here. And here's the chapter, and here's the data for chapter 12. So I'm gonna download this and we're gonna look at it for just a second. All right, and as you can see, he's done some crosstab work, and I want to let you take a look at it. But again, you know, he walks you through chapter 12 using the crosstab queries. Now I'm going to open one up for you and just and let you see it. All right. Okay. That's the result of it. And the purchase dates, and these are different products that they carry. Okay. And we'll go down to the design view, and you'll see what we've done. Okay. Now, obviously, they're going to give you that breadcrumb or that feedback saying, "Hey, you're running a cross-tab query," and here, you know, we'll go ahead and show the table. Or I thought we would. I guess we're not going to. But anyway, we're pulling the field. This is the table figure 12.4. And we're pulling purchase date, supplier name, and total purchase. And then we're grouping, and then we're getting a sum. Okay? Now let's just let's run it. And there's the view. Now remember, okay, we're looking at dates, okay? And that is obviously, those dates are obviously a dimension or an attribute. Then we're looking at a particular type of product and how much was spent on each one of them. And we'll go back down now to the SQL view, and we'll see it. I'm going to take this SQL, and I'm going to put it out here. Let me see. I want to start a new. I'll start a new file. And I don't need to save all that information. All right. So here we go. Now, this is in Access. Oracle has a little bit different way of doing this, and when we get into the Patrick text where we're writing some code, you're going to see. But here we're using the transform function, and then the sum, and then we have the table, okay, and the field, and then we use what we call an alias, a sum of total purchase, and we're going to select purchase date from, and then we group it, and then the pivot. That's the SQL, which is fine. Okay, if it's really important to you to write it, or if it's important for you to see it. Most of you are going to you'll be working in the drag and drop environment, and I think we're doing the purchase date. Which table are we working with there? Purchase the tables figure 12.4. Huh? Not in there. All right, that's interesting. Thought that. Huh. Well, okay. That one's kind of throwing me. We must have created a table, a pseudonym. Now, here's another crosstab, and we had just all we did is we just exported the data out. And let's look at this one. Okay, and here we've got the supplier name, which is of course a dimension, then a description. Then we have dates, okay, which we're using as dimensions as well. And then we've got the sum of those. Now, we could take this, we could export it, and all I have to do is just close this thing off and then click, and I can export it to Excel, and then I could work with it in a pivot table, which is probably going to make a lot more sense if I want to look at the data in a number of ways. Now, again, this is just, you know, just a more convenient way to do it, frankly. And you can see over here on the sheet how much easier it's going to be, because the environment just, I think, it's just a better interface. And this table, now, we also have and I have something here about see the SQL. Let's open that up for a minute. All right. I'll go down to the SQL view. And we'll pop that up here for a second. We'll take a look at it. You'll start to see there's nothing that's so terribly difficult you can't understand it. You see again that transform, okay? And we have a sum, and this is quantity times the price per item, and then we have what we call a column alias as total purchase, and we're selecting a purchase date from the purchases table, okay? And that's from purchases, and we're doing an inner join of products on purchases inner join, and inner join products on purchases dot product ID equals the products dot product ID. So we're doing inner join on those two tables, and then another inner join of suppliers, where the supplier from the products table, where the supplier IDs match up, and then we group them by purchases, and then we run the pivot. Again, it's not really intuitively obvious, and I think this is a lot of work versus pulling everything over here, dragging it and dropping it where you want to. Now, we have over here the state and the sales, and just for kicks, I'm going to put the columns over here, okay? And if I want to see the state, I want to look at them differently, I can just select multiple items, and we'll do that. And I'm going to select Florida. Okay. And this should be working. It's not cooperating for me today. Huh. How weird. Okay. Let's take this down to the rows. Oh, there we go. All right. And we'll take the region. We've got the regions in the columns, and we have them by state. And we can pretty it up a little bit. And again, this starts to bring us to a point where we can look at the grand total, but I'm going to go within these cells right here. I'm going to go inside of. I'm going to go in cell B5 down here to D13. And I'm going to try some conditional formatting on it, okay? Or I can use another Boolean. I could say, okay, and let me go in here and I'll highlight this. And then let's hopefully clear the rules from the selected items. Okay, and this time what I'm going to do is I'm going to say, okay, you can see I like conditional formats because I'm lazy. I admit it. And I'm going to highlight cells that are less than, because I'm looking for any cells that are less than 20,000. Okay. Now it gave me color in here, but there were no data. But it applied the full measure in terms of a fill and a font color. And so I see I've got 3 that are in trouble. Now I could do it conversely. Obviously I can come in and clear those rules. And what I'll do this time is I will highlight the cells that are greater than 30,000. I'll do those little green fill. And that shows me my higher cells. Okay, so you can see I've got just a lot more. It's just a lot easier to use. Let's just put it on there, okay? The whole point of this stuff is so you can make a decision and do something with it, spending your time trying to write codes or all that stuff. And you can put this in chart, but again, I think pivot tables are about 9,000 times better than what you could be utilizing. So, you know, that's pretty much it there. Now, I want to go back here for just a moment and take us back over to the modules. And I want to make sure we know, for again, over to the syllabus area, we know what we got going on. And then this will show us on the 7th, you've got that exam, and then on the 14th, you had the 4 uploads. You should have uploaded 1 and 2, and we're doing 3 today, and then we're doing 4. Okay, we'll do that Thursday, and that's will be a lot. Will be a physical. That's a ground class, and then you've got these 2 exams. Okay, that are due on by the 14th. Now, once we're through that, of course, we're going to start to launch into working with, and you'll see these things, lunches, LDT1, and this is the lunches database. Okay, I want to talk about this because this is where we're going to start to write some code. And basically what we have is the author is going to give you each chapter. That's the lunches database. They have a database, and each chapter we're just going to build successively on how complicated the code is. And what we'll have is we'll have the code, okay, and then we'll just throw it into the SQL area and execute the code, and we'll see. So it's that, and that's not going to be that big of a deal. But what I want to make sure that you understand is we'll go from here and we'll be actually writing some code, okay? And what you're going to find out is it's very, very intuitive. Now, I have some other things in here. This is a business intelligence. This is out of that business intelligence textbook. I have some exercises for those that you'll be doing, okay? And as you can see, we start to move down to the point where I'll give you some check your understanding items that'll be due. And then I have an Oracle assignment. If you choose to do it, that's optional, okay? That's over in the back of text number 1. They have walk you the whole thing of downloading a baby Oracle on your machine if you want to use it. And then SAS, you're certainly gonna get a chance to work with that. And so we're going to move out of writing code and working with it and seeing what the code looks like at the design level, what it looks like at a data set level, what it looks like at the pure code level. And the SAS project, that stuff, those will walk you through working with SAS visual analytics, and that's and they have a version of it over at Teradata University, which is a repository for all kinds of resources for folks that work in IT and databases and business intelligence. And you're going to get some experience. So when you go out to work, you'll be able to tell your employer, hey, I've worked with SAS, I've seen some Oracle, I've certainly worked with Access, I've worked with SQL, I understand about business intelligence, and you're going to be far and away. I was heads and shoulders above other people applying for those positions. The students, and there may be some of you who were in 3503, I asked them to go, and I gave them an assignment where they go over to Monster or any job listing and find positions in their area, okay, and find out what were some of the things that employers were after. And everybody came back with they want you to be able to use a spreadsheet. They would really like you to be able to use a database. If you're comfortable doing a little bit of light coding, they might want that. But I'm just going to tell you now, if you just take the set of BISS courses we offer you, and I've mentioned this before, you'll leave with basically the same skills as an entry-level business analyst. So you're far, far ahead of everybody. And as we go through these, doing these uploads and working with these little business problems we'll be given out of the Patrick text, that's one SQL fundamentals. There will be a lot there for us to see in terms of how databases are put together, the back end, and how that how the back end connects in with the office end. And that's why we call this a course of data administration, so you understand it, and also that you understand a lot about how the type of data we collect and how we format it and express it, etc., has all kinds of implications for what we get out of the database. So this week, the author was, chapter 12 walks you through crosstab queries and pivot tables, okay? And that's fine because you're able to start to move into that analytical cube a little deeper. Now, since I've got this open, I'm going to go ahead and do this. I'm going to close this one off, and I've got this see the SQL, and I'm gonna do this. Let's open up the products for just a minute and see what all is in there. Okay, there's the products, and it's a dimension table. It's got the supplier ID and the product. Okay, so that makes sense. And then let's look at the purchases. Now this purchases table. Okay. This purchases table is really a fact table. Okay, so if I were old school, that would be a DIM products. This would be fact purchases. And then let's look at the suppliers, and that's another dimension table, and that's the supplier and the ID. Now, let's look at this for just a moment on this database, okay? And let's see if there are any relationships there. And here we see a pretty typical schema. I'm sorry, that's strange looking at it. And what we see is the products table. Well, the purchases table is really the fact table that's supported, but the products table acts as an intermediary between them, and you can see that. So you have a product. Watch what you've got in here. You've got the product ID and the supplier ID. Now the supplier ID ties these two tables together, okay, and then the product ID ties into this purchases table, which is really a fact table, okay? And because they're all three tied together, let's try to do a little data warehouse, because you got a fact table here. Let's see if we can create a little DW. So I'm going to close this off, okay? And I'm going to click create, and I'm going to go to query design. I'm going to add the products query. Glad to see it. Grant, Jared. We've got 5 of us. And remember, this is recorded, so if you're late, don't worry about it. And we're going to get products. We'll add that one. And I'll add suppliers, and we'll add that one. Okay? And we want to get, let's start with the product ID and the purchase ID and the supplier ID, and then we're going to get the product. In fact, let me just do this. Let's do this. Put these in a better order, because I'm just, and we'll work to left to right on this. I'm going to get the product ID, and I'm going to get the description. Then I'm going to get the supplier ID and the supplier name. And I'm going to get the purchase date. And I'm going to get the quantity and the price per item. And let's just take a look up here and see this. See now, as you notice, this is a little bit different from a fact table, because this is why we call this a data warehouse table, because we got a lot more dimensions than we do measures, and we'll look at that. And here we have more of a data warehouse type query, okay? And we've got the product ID and its description. We've got the supplier ID and the supplier name, the purchase date, the quantity, and the price per item. So now, if we're wanted with these two measures, okay, quantity and price per item, we can do some heavy lifting if we want to, in terms of doing some analytical work with it, getting averages and so forth. I wouldn't do that. I'd say I'm gonna save this, okay, as DW. Let's just call this DW sales, okay, and we'll click OK. And this tells us this is more of like a data warehouse table, okay, a data warehouse critter than any one of these others. So now I can export this, and I'm just going to do that. I'm going to export it over here to our desktop. Okay, and I call it DW Dales. It should be D. Yeah, I'm going to save the file name as. I can change it when I get there. And I'm going to save it on the desktop. I'll click OK. And then I'm going to diminish down. I'm going to find it. Here it is. And you can see there's Cardinal Buddy again. He's everywhere, isn't he? There's the purchase. There's the supplier name. Now, I can go to town in measuring this in terms of, yeah, the average. Well, okay. We'll put rev gen, meaning revenue generated, okay? And this is going to be simple. And we'll just call it, put $sign in front of that, and it'll be F2 times G2. Put a $sign in that, and we'll just drag and drop. Okay, now let's go ahead and put this into, okay, I do the same thing here, because we're talking about money. The quantity, I'm gonna throw it here in the middle. Now I'm ready to do some work if I want with the pivot table. On the supplier ID, same story. I'm gonna come in here and put it in the middle. It's supposed to be in the middle, but there we go. Okay. And I'll do the same thing with the product ID here. I'm just doing a little formatting, that's all. But now I'm ready to go ahead and use it. And we'll just go ahead and we'll go ahead and put a nice fill on it. Yeah, I don't like that. Oh, we can, yeah. Let's get that off there because the yellow it's kind of ugly. Oh, all right. And then we border this off if we wanted to just have something to present raw data. But now I'm ready to go ahead and, as you can see, to utilize the pivot table. So I'm going to click up there. I click Insert Pivot Table. Okay, I'm put it in a new worksheet, and now I'm ready to go. And now you can see I've got revenue, quantity, price. I've got all kinds of ways from a measures standpoint to look at this. And you say, well, how does that make it a data warehouse? Well, think of it like this. In a warehouse, you can order items and quantities. And so when we're like with this revenue generator, price per item or quantity, we could say, okay, I want the average, I want the largest, I want the sum. And you know, we've got some we have some latitude. Let me give you an example. I put description. That's too many. Put them in the rows. And then I'm going to put the revenue generated. Now, values. This shows us all the revenue generated, okay, by each of those products. All right. Now, if you click on the little bar here, I can go to value field settings, and I can express these in any one of a number of ways: as a count, as an average, a max, a min, the standard deviation. Okay, so out of this one piece of data, I can get even more comparative information if I choose to. Okay, and again, I guess we've got the column labels. We might do quantity over here, and let's see what quantity looks like. That's interesting. Again, as I've said before, you're going to have some times where you'll run a query, all right, and some queries will be routine types of things. Others will be, you know, those are their serendipitous. So again, you know, we put this into a worksheet where it's easier to work with the thing. And here's our DW sales. But I can tell you, you've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. You have 8 columns. Okay. You've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. You've got 10 products. Okay. And let's see, product ID is a wood yardstick. Let's look at this for a minute because I want to see supplier. Okay, so they've got 2 suppliers that give them this product. So what I was doing is trying to give us a sense of the number of records times the number of records times the number of columns, i.e. rows, and that will give you the potential, what we call the -1 for the columns and tables, what we call the degrees of freedom. That kind of sounds like the statistics when we did cross tabulations, yeah. And we can take that, and that tells us how many potential combinations we've got there, okay? And the more of them that we have, the deeper a dive we can take into that thing we call the analytical cube. Now, we've got about 25 or 30 minutes left here, and I want to go back for a moment over to the, and I think we're pretty well caught up on what's going on there. Go back over to the modules area, okay? And close this one off, and I just want to take a couple of minutes and walk you over there. There's, of course, the Rockoff exam. That one. This is some interesting stuff. This is, again, some of the practical implications we have with databases. Okay. This is a fantastic tool. And this shows all of the known bombing sites in London. And as you see, as you scroll out of the way, you can see it in contrast to the whole country, which tells you, of course, that they were a target. And this uses spots, geographic locations, and they give you a census, and it lets you do some filtering. I think this is interesting. Here's the first night of the Blitz. and this is how many bombs were dropped at what time. Okay, and then you could see the weekly bomb census. And I don't know what day of the week. I would assume that's Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. I guess it is. And then they give you aggregate bomb census. That's that whole. And you could navigate around this map, and this gives you the information from where they procured it, how to use the map, that type of thing. This is not possible unless you have a database. And this is a street map view. We'll put it into the satellite view, and you can see. Okay. And they also have these are what they call incidents, and these are what they call anti-invasion sites. Let's see if those pop up. Yeah, the Germans, these are basically, the yellow things are basically defensive. These are buildings with artillery in them that the Germans knew about. These were pillboxes. These were tank traps. All kinds of things from their aerial. And then here are the 1940 bomb maps. Okay, but it's very, very interesting stuff to me. And you can see the layers here. You're doing the filtering. So again, this is important because it's about every 6 months they find some 200 or 300 pound bomb, and they have to evacuate a bunch of people. And in Europe, it's just as bad. There are parts of France from where they had the trench warfare in the First World War that they just simply will not let people go in there, or they won't let people farm. They won't do anything because there's so much unexploded ordnance. Okay, and so just something I thought was kind of interesting to take a look at. Now we'll go back over and let's go back here for a sec. And I wanted to show you, I had some other things I want to show you here. Let me pop that up and close it off for just a sec. Here we go. This is from the Mine Advisory Group. Okay. And they plot, this is in the United, and they plot where mines, the number of landmines, and how many are unexploded. That is an unbelievable amount of ordnance, and the people that usually suffer are the kids. Okay, the young people, young children that get in there and get in and mess and accidentally get themselves involved there. And this is the Mine Advisory Group. This is what they're involved in, is trying to find these things and get rid of them. Okay. And again, I think somebody worth knowing a little bit about. I'll go back over here for just a minute. And the Mine Advisory. Here is a link from the Geneva International Center for Humanitarian Demining. These are people who are actually out there trying to get that stuff picked up. Okay, you would not believe how much stuff is out there. Okay, and it's unbelievable. And databases make this possible. And again, these are good things that we can do with databases. And I'll have some other things that I'll show you from time to time. Come down over here. these are some of the things you're seeing, like virtual assistants, and you're aware of those, and you interact with machines. You make a phone call in your car, all that type of stuff. Again, something there for you to take a look at and to think about. And again, this is just not possible without the use of database technology. So that's pretty much it. I'll call it a wrap. And what I want to do, again, want to make sure that we're all on top of what's going on. Okay. This week you have the rock-off exam. Okay, it's due at the end of the week. And today we looked at Access Workshop number 3. And on Thursday, we'll look at Access Workshop number 4. This is out of the Rockford book. And so we will have covered just about everything we need to know about an overview of a data warehouse and database concepts. And then we're going to start to work with some code as we go through these lunches databases. And once we've done that, we'll see how the code translates into the GUI, that little design area, and then result sets, data formatting, some of the limits of SQL. There are some versus Oracle, and we'll just take it out chapter by chapter, and we'll run those. And I want to take just a few minutes to show you that. And so let's come over here to the files area. Okay. And again, I want to thank the 5 of you that are here today. Thank you so much. Appreciate it. And again, you do have the option to listen in, and then I'll be there physically on Thursday. There's a thing. This is the Patrick Materials zip, and I'm going to download it and just let you see what's in there. Okay. This is the code for specific chapters. Now, when you hear me talk about the Patrick text, the Rockoff text is the one that's data analysis with Access 2010 for simple queries. It is for business intelligence. Okay, that's this whole thing, and we've just seen how we can take data and now put it into a database and use it for decision making. The SQL fundamentals, okay, that's the John Patrick book that has the SQ blocks on it. Okay, so that's the textbook, and as you go through it, you're going to see in each chapter he'll have a particular question or problem that we're working with a database. And the database we're going to be working with is this one called SQL Fun, and I'm going to open it up for just a minute. Okay? And you're going to see it has all kinds of tables that we'll be using, and it has a few queries that are preloaded, but and a couple of forms, and I think maybe a report. But we're going to be loading SQL into the create area, and then we'll run the queries. Okay, so that's what we'll be doing. Now, I'm going to go back over here to the Patrick Materials. Oh, we've got them opened up here. And you can see, and we'll open that, and it'll show you the code for each of the chapters. Okay, so I'll be pretty selective in terms of what we run, so that we have some variety in terms of what's doing. Now, this is important because, all right, it's going to be helpful to you when you go out to an employer, that if you need to look at a query or you're asked to report, you'll see it in code terms. And you may have employers say, have you ever written any code in a database like SQL? And you'll be able to say yes. And the experience that you'll get, and what I found is that once students like myself work with code, okay, at that level, you find that it's not that difficult, and then you see it translated into a graphic user interface or object-oriented programming, and then a result set, and you start to see this idea of a data cube, and you start to see how powerful a tool that is. And now with the displays like we saw today, those maps of Houston, or we saw that mine advisory group, you saw all those bomb sites around London. Okay, you can see now how we can use these tools. We can take data of a data warehouse, dump it into, run a query, dump that into Excel, do some work with that, and then create and then report it. Do that on the fly. We can do it, in a synchronous, write a report for somebody. So we're moving ahead, and one of the things you're going to find is that working with this code is a lot easier than you may anticipate. So some of you are going to be in, there will always be one or two of you who will be inspired to say, gee, this is really interesting stuff, and I want to sit and understand it. And I think it's important, it's imperative for you to do that. Now, you may have heard this story before, but I'm going to tell you a war story, and it's this. Long time ago, when I was a faculty member at Southeast Missouri State University, okay, I was over in the business college, and the folks over in the College of Science, the chemistry department had an exchange program with a company in town that was in the polymers business, plastics. And so here's the way it would work. One of the scientists who worked for that company would come over and teach, okay? And the faculty member would go over there and do their work. And so they started, and that got the university involved with those folks. And then they wanted to get the College of Business people involved, okay? So we were over there, and we started to do some work with them. And the vice president of sales said, you know, we do a lot of destructive and non-destructive testing. And he said, we get some residue. This is stuff that's left over. And he said, then we have the chemical composition broken down of the leftover. What is that like? Okay. And what's in there. And he said, we're kind of building a catalog. And I said, okay. And he said, do you think we might be able to sell the catalog? And I said, well, yeah. In those days, databases were pretty crude, and everything was in code. And I said, I think you'd be far better off, probably quicker, to just to attach, you know, a descriptive piece of paper and then an assay or ASSAY, a report of what's there, okay? And he did. And he went to a market, he went to a trade show, okay, and people went nuts because what they were finding was they were seeing some of the stuff. All these people did was test polymers, and they were seeing out of his catalog the kinds of compounds that they might need. So I learned early on, and that book was a database. A cookbook is a database for all intents and purposes. And later, and it was about maybe 2 years later, that company got bought out by another much larger firm up in St. Louis. And I wondered, what's the value here? Because they had a small shop. And then and I talked with the dean of science. I said, he called me and said, what do you think is the value in it? What are they after? Why are they being pursued? And I said, I think it's because they have an intellectual property there, and it's that catalog of all of the results of their tests and all of the results of what's the residue once they take those polymers and do the destructive and non-destructive testing. Bam! It really hit me how powerful databases are. I'd done my dissertation and worked a little bit with text recognition, but I really just didn't see it till then. So, you know, a war story you had to sit through. My apologies. but I think we covered some ground. So on Thursday, we're going to work on Access Workshop number 4, okay? And then we'll launch into the Patrick text in the Lunches database. So you want to bring both books, the Lunches database, the Patrick text and the Rockoff text, and we'll do that. And remember, if you get confused, you say, okay, what do I upload for Access Workshop number 3? I've got it over here in Announcements, okay? And here are the uploads. And here's what we've really done, okay? This is a good summary. We learned about a data warehouse, okay? What is it composed of? It's composed of data of several databases, either intact and then connected in, or pieces like a table and queries. And in this data warehouse, we have tables and queries that are scattered throughout the warehouse, okay? And if they were all joined, if we had one database after database all tied together, that's what we call enterprise computing, okay? Then we have, for Access Workshop number 2, we took a fact sales and we did an export of a fact table, okay? Today we did another export of another fact table, but at a lower level, okay? And then I showed you how we could come back and throw in the whole kitchen sink. And then finally, Access Workshop 4 will be the sales database, and we're going to look at that in those Rockoff materials. We'll talk about the sales database. And so we've gone from the very general, the warehouse, okay, down to a couple of exports, or we filled some orders, if you will, since we're talking about data warehouse, a data warehouse concept, and then we'll see a database, and that's Access Workshop number 4. Well, thank you so much. The 5 or 6 of you are here. Let's see, I see 5 of us, 6 of us, so it's me and 5 of you. Let me see if I can get the participants up there to show up. Sometimes it will cook up. There you are. Brian, thank you. Carolyn, Erica, Grant, and Jared, thank you so much. And again, of course, this will be in, I'll save the recording and then post it on YouTube. And others will be, be looking at it. And I'll see everybody Thursday. Take care, everybody, and have a good one.